everybody. Welcome back to our show. I am very delighted to have Paul Graziano with us. Some call him Paul Revere. Why is he called Paul Revere? It's because he's been putting community boards and local civic organizations on high alert. His message is, the developers are coming. The developers are coming to tear down your homes and replace them with apartment houses. What is this alert about? It's a plan by our dear Mayor Adams to tear down small outer borough communities in order to allow the largest New York City developers to build high-rises in their place in the outer boroughs. In the name of right-sounding words, foster vibrant neighborhoods. Doesn't it sound beautiful? Relocate small businesses so they can be near their customers. Create gentle density and missing middle housing. Oh yes, build housing that is more affordable. Watch out, when you hear that word affordable, watch out. They are calling this zoning package the City of Yes. People listen to the bright sounding words. They don't think, what does it mean? They are blinded by its brightness. They only hear hope. They do not research into what has already happened when those bright sounding words have been put into effect. Today, Paul Graziano is going to help us find out what those bright sounding words actually mean. Here are the smiley code words. Vibrant neighborhoods. Paul, what does vibrant neighborhoods mean?
Vibrant is like the word robust. It's just a descriptor, as they say. Vibrant, energetic, active, diverse, all kinds of code words for a particular type of vision that the city would like you to see.
Thick.
Right, correct. This is not the case. This is not what vibrant means. Vibrant means colorful, right? It means light. And what
Gives life.
Yes, gives life. And what this proposal will do is the exact opposite of that. It will take away light, air, space, and as some people have said at the public hearing yesterday, this is not the city of yes, it's the city of mess, it's the city of cement, and that's why we say,
darkness.
And darkness, and that's why we say no to the city of yes.
Because it will take away the light. Climate neutral. How is this proposal climate neutral?
Well, the first part of this proposal was called City of Yes for Carbon Neutrality. In theory, the idea was, with the first part of this, which passed in December with little fanfare or notice, that this would create energy efficiencies and new technology and solar panels and all kinds of, clean energy kinds of things. The problem is, a lot of this stuff, again, these are all written by industry, right? They're written by industry for industry. They're not written by the people. And one of the things that I found out, for example, within the carbon neutrality package was to create battery farms around the city. And for anybody who has ever seen what a Con Edison transformer looks like in any kind of street outside of Manhattan, just imagine that 10 times as large. And now imagine that they're being sited next to a single family home or 20 feet from a gas station, which is actually the case in Staten Island. These things catch fire, and when they catch fire, they burn for days. They can't be put out. There have been 3 of these already just in the last 6 months in New York State.
And they create, noxious...
Of course, and dangerous to the people who live near them.
Because the fire can spread.
Absolutely. And again, just imagine it next to a gas station.
Ooh.
Imagine if the gas station catches fire from this transformer. So these are not very well thought out.
Well, let's put it this way. They're not
Correct. Correct.
Fair share. I have 4 questions. What does fair share mean? How are the burdens being fairly distributed or divided? And what are the benefits? How are the benefits being distributed?
Right. So the idea of fair share, according to the city, is that fair share is that every community has to pitch in for an equal amount of burden, right? So there's a big discussion, for example, of, well, there are so many homeless shelters in Manhattan. We need to spread them to every corner of the city. We need affordable housing in every corner of the city. We need methadone clinics and drug rehab centers and all of these other things in every neighborhood in every corner of the city. The problem is, when it comes to the benefits, we don't see the benefits being spread to every part of the city.
Do they describe the benefits?
Well, what I mean by that is, how do you deal, for example, when you have a lot of homeless shelters in Manhattan, they are difficult. There's no question about it, and having a density of homeless shelters in one area is problematic. However, when you have the same number of people surrounded by single-family homes, or in a suburban area, or in a place that doesn't have any services to help those folks who are in need, it's impossible to deal with it in a way that it can be dealt with in Manhattan, or in downtown Brooklyn, or in places that have density and infrastructure to handle the real problems that these folks have. And some of them really have problems that cannot be solved if they're out in eastern Queens with no transportation and no social services and no schools for their kids and all kinds of other things. So it's hard to do fair share when you don't have the ability to help those folks, and these communities don't have the benefits, meaning they don't have the infrastructure. And they never will have the infrastructure. It will never happen.
It's not even thought of.
It's not even thought of. It's just, let's dump things where it cannot be absorbed.
City of Yes.
So, we have a mayor who's very fond of taglines.
Oh, yes.
When he was the borough president, his slogan was, "Build, baby, build." The City of Yes, again, is one of his taglines. He created something right after he came out of the election in 2021, the first week, called the BLAST Committee, B-L-A-S-T. I can't remember what the acronym stands for, but essentially it was all of the donors to his campaign in the real estate and construction industries, as well as for-profit housing groups and a lot of other allied, some nonprofit, but a lot of for-profit housing, and all of their allies. They were given the task of coming up with a list, their wish list, which was called Get Stuff Built. Literally, Get Stuff Built. And that list ultimately became the City of Yes. And again, the City of Yes is divided into 3 sections: carbon neutrality, economic opportunity, which focused heavily on commercial zoning. That was approved 1 month ago by the City Council.
By the City Council.
Oh yes, and the carbon neutrality was approved in December by the City Council.
And they didn't go back to their constituents to...
Well, we can get into that.
Okay.
And the housing piece, which had their public hearing yesterday, which went actually until 12:55 this morning. It was 15 hours long, which I was on until the end of it. So this is government. When everybody thinks of government overreach and people talk about how people and government operates and does things that are really against the people who live in this city or anywhere or in the state, this is a great example of this.
Well, I'm aware that the zoning board is composed of the children of the major developers.
You mean the City Planning Commission?
Yes, that's right.
Yeah, some of the people on the City Planning Commission, but even if they're not the children, they're in the industry. They're real estate people. They are housing people.
They're not ordinary people like you and I.
They're not ordinary people like you or I. I happen to be one of those ordinary people that has a pretty deep knowledge on this. I'm one of the few people who does. So I try to help to fight this, because if this stuff goes through, our communities, not just in our communities in Eastern Queens or Central Queens or other parts of the city, in Brooklyn, the Bronx, Staten Island, but even in Manhattan, this is going to be devastating to communities. This is not something that is going to help communities at all.
It's going to wipe them out.
It's going to wipe them out across the city. And it will fundamentally change the city in a way that I don't think anybody is anticipating.
But we're going to go to what you're talking about.
Correct.
Relocate small businesses so they can be near their customers. I find this very interesting. Doesn't make sense to me. Aren't they near their customers now?
Right. So let's talk about one of the proposals, and there were a number of proposals in the economic opportunity part of the city of Yes. Now this document was 1,127 pages long of zoning text. I'm one of the few people who doesn't work for this Department of City Planning who actually read it. And I read it multiple times. And when they came out and showed these, I call them puppy dogs and ice cream slides to the public and to the community boards, these slides really didn't describe what they were proposing. They would have a one-sentence explanation. So for example, I'll give you an example. Proposal number 16 was something to be found, paraphrasing probably, but it's something to the effect of, we bring retail stores to neighborhoods, corner stores, that's what they call them, corner stores and bodegas, to neighborhoods around the city where they don't have access to them. Now, that was a one-sentence explanation. What it actually said in the zoning text was, allow commercial, retail, storefront, or office up to 2,500 square feet within 100 feet of every corner on every block in New York City, whether it's a residentially zoned area or a commercially zoned area. Now, Manhattan,
that, please.
allow commercial, retail, office, or storefronts within 100 feet of every corner on every residential block in New York City. In New York City. Now, that may not be a big deal to Manhattan, where most avenues have commercial within 100 feet of a corner. But when you start looking at most of the rest of the city, outside of your downtown areas, outside of your commercial strips, it's mostly residential. Now you would be able, in theory, to go to the City Planning Commission and ask them for a simple authorization to build up to 2,500 square feet of commercial on your property in the middle of a residential neighborhood. Their argument was, there were multiple arguments, but their argument was, well, you know, there's 265,000 people in the city who are more than a quarter of a mile from a retail store to get their gallon of milk in the morning. And then that sounds like a lot of people, but 265,000 people is 3% of the population of New York City. And it's mostly in the suburban areas of the city that don't want a corner store in their community. So what was the real reason for this?
That could be any kind of corner store.
Any kind of corner store, not a bodega, not a retail store.
Selling.
Sorry?
It could be a store selling cannabis.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Anything allowed in a C zone, a C1 or 2 zone, which is any kind of retail, any kind of office space, any kind, within the parameters of that. It was a large number of places that could do it. Okay. So the real reason they did this was not this whole thing about, well, we want everybody to have access. The real reason was when you're building those new apartment buildings in these lower density areas, you're now going to be able to put up to 2,500 square feet of commercial within that new apartment building. That's the real reason they did it. That was the one piece that was stripped by the city council. Out of the 18 proposals, that was the only one that was removed. And that was because of the outcry from the communities around the city saying this is going to destroy us.
Helping businesses to grow.
So one of the other proposals that was made was to radically increase home businesses. Now when we think of a home business, we think of white-collar attorneys or an architect or a planner or a doctor or something, you know, with a room in their home, or a psychotherapist with a room in their home that's being used for business. Well, their initial proposal was to allow for 49% of anyone's home to be used for business up with no limit on the square footage within the home, and up to 3 employees working in that home for any business, including nail salons and barber shops.
And metalworking.
Not metalworking, but other things that don't make any sense to have in people's apartments. So the first thing that people said was, well, first of all, right now it's 25% of your home up to 500 square feet. So in other words, if you have a 400 square foot apartment, you could use 100 square feet. If you have a 2,000 square foot home, you could use 500 square feet. No more than 500 square feet for your business. It could be, again, sole proprietorship. This is to radically expand the types of businesses and bringing in employees into people's homes. And people started saying, well, now if someone's running a business out of their home and we're in an apartment building, you're now going to have people going in and out of your home at all times, buzzing people in. Oh, don't worry about that. That's not going to be a problem, because if you're in a co-op, the rules of your co-op are still going to be the ones that are going to be guaranteeing things. So they ultimately changed it. So now it's 49% of your home, but only up to 1,000 square feet, and you can only have 1 employee. But you can still have all kinds of new businesses in your home.
And you can have, your home will have children. And
Correct.
you don't know if the guy coming into the building is a tramp.
Well, or whatever. I mean, someone doesn't have to be a tramp, but they can be someone that you don't know coming to your home.
Or even that doesn't even do business with a business.
Or doesn't do business with the business, or gets buzzed in and does something else.
That's right.
Correct. This is now law as of June. As of 1 month ago, this is now law. People have no idea about this. And what's going to happen is people are going to get hurt. There are going to be incidents, and people are going to say, how is this legal? A year from now, 2 years from now, 6 months from now, and it's going to come back on the City Planning Commission and the City Council who approved this.
The same city council that says that you're not arrestable if you steal less than $10,000 worth of goods.
Correct. Yes. Not just the City Council, the state legislature. Both.
Mm-hmm.
Correct. So you have a situation where businesses are now encouraged to go into residential areas. Industrial businesses are now encouraged to go into commercial areas. That's also been approved. Residential areas are now encouraged to go into commercial areas because we should all live in a mixed-use space at all times. Now, that may work in Manhattan. That may work in places in Brooklyn. It may work in Long Island City. It doesn't work in Eastern Queens. It doesn't work in Southern Brooklyn. It certainly doesn't work in Staten Island or large parts of the Bronx. We have different typologies, different types of communities, and we have different types of needs and quality of life expectations. We come into a community and we know what we're buying into when we come into that community. And if the rules are now changed to allow this everywhere, everything's going to go upside down.
I just think of all the people who spent years paying off mortgages on single-family homes.
Correct.
Where their homes can be demolished for community betterment.
Whether it's,
Take it.
commercial, or again, now what was a one-family home can now be a one-family home with a commercial entity in it, which you couldn't do before, to the extent that they want to do. Another one that I'll mention briefly, allowing upper floor commercial in apartment buildings, such as the one that we are sitting in today, or row houses. Now, upper floor commercial is allowed. Where before, you think of commercial as ground floor. There's a separation between commercial and residential. Now, upper floors will be allowed to have commercial above residential.
Which means that they could do their business till 10 o'clock at night.
They can do their business for whatever the hours allow. Quote unquote. They will need more soundproofing and other things to do. But again, you're getting back into the access issue. You're getting back into people being buzzed into buildings. This is the idea of having ground floor and even second floor offices, right? A lot of buildings have first floor with retail and second floor with dentist office or doctor's offices or lawyers or whatever, is to keep people, outside people, in places that, let's call them shared spaces, public-private spaces. Now you're bringing public people into private spaces.
And making everything public.
And making everything public. Correct. They did clarify that those businesses can't spill out into shared hallways. Yeah.
How do they, when people walk up through the door and they enter a hallway?
No, meaning people can't like sell their goods on the hallway. They can't use it for storage and whatever. They can't, that kind of thing.
Gentle density, that's another.
Gentle density, that's one of my favorites. So, one of the proposals in the housing portion of this City of Yes, which is what we just had the hearing yesterday, is what they call gentle density. And this is to encourage what are called ADUs, accessory dwelling units. Accessory dwelling units are basements and cellars, attics, additions to your homes, garage conversions, or a new house behind your house. What used to be called back houses in the 18th and 19th centuries. This entire proposal is actually bringing us back to 19th century New York, which is extreme density and all kinds of housing types that we got away from because A, they're dangerous, and B, they led to overcrowding, and frankly, they led to plagues, which are not anything that has disappeared, believe it or not. This is not something that is yesterday's news. So again, their statement is, well, it's not going to create a problem if someone converts their basement or cellar or their attic or their, again, addition or their garage or their new two-story house in their backyard. Don't worry about it. And this is specifically for 1 and 2 family properties only in the city of New York. Now, 1 family zoning, unlike most cities where 1 family zoning is 60, 70, 80% of the city, think Los Angeles, 75% single family zoning. Chicago, 79% single family zoning. You would never think of Chicago as being that. Seattle, 81% single family zoning. Even Washington, D.C., 36% single family zoning. New York City is 15%. It is the smallest amount of single family zoning of any major city in the United States.
They get rid of it.
What?
Basically, they're getting rid of it.
They want to get rid of what they call exclusionary zoning. Now, it's impossible to be exclusionary when more than 75% of the city is zoned for multifamily development. So it's 15% one family, 9% two family, and the remainder is multifamily. Our 15%, and I live in a one-family zone, our 15%, 2/3 of it is in eastern Queens, east of the Van Wyck Expressway to the Nassau County border. Why? We have no transit. We have no infrastructure. We are at the edge of the city. We are mostly one family and two family zoning. Some areas are dense. Downtown Flushing, which I live next to, very dense. Downtown Jamaica, also very dense. Some other areas too. But the reason it's one family with also two family zoning is primarily low density residential. Changing the ability for people, when you have a one family home and you have a new unit, that's a 100% increase in density, right? If you have a one family home that's now allowed to be two families, and then you can put an additional unit, that's 3 families on each one family property, that's going to be the baseline.
How about people, a group of people living together, like construction workers, all assigned to, they want to
Yes.
occupy one room?
So today, the definition of family is 3 unrelated people living in a home together.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you see it all the time where roommates split an apartment. They also split a house. That's normal. However, right now, we have a problem with illegal conversions, particularly in Queens. We have the most illegal conversions in the city of New York, by far. We're at least 50% of the illegal basement and cellar apartments. Why are they illegal? They're dangerous. Most basements and cellars are not fit for habitation. Manhattan, 1% of the apartments in Manhattan are basement apartments. 1%. So it's interesting that most of the people who have been in favor of legalizing basement and cellar apartments are Manhattan legislators. Manhattan community boards, Manhattan city council members, not the people in Queens, not the people in other parts of the city in Brooklyn and Manhattan and the Bronx and Staten Island. So we have these situations where we have very dangerous cellars and basements being rented out for $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 a month to multiple families, and then when we have a hurricane, they die. When there's a fire and there's an illegal attic apartment, they die. Their statement is, the city's statement, we want to bring them into the sunlight. We want to regulate them and make them safe. This will never happen. If they legalize them, we will never have enforcement ever again. The people who are doing this do not want to be brought out into the sunlight. Why? Think about it. If they are now legal, they have to follow building code.
And the taxes.
They have to change their certificate of occupancy, their C of O. Now they're no longer a one-family home or a two-family home. Their taxes go up. Then they have to pay income tax on the money that they're generating from their unit, which currently is cash that they're putting in their pocket. So there is no incentive for these tens of thousands of units and these illegal spaces to be legalized. They do not want this. All it will do is encourage more illegal units because the city will say, well, we can't really go after that anymore now that we've legalized them. Okay, this is an unacceptable situation. This is not gentle density. This is a disaster for our communities. And this would affect all 1 and 2 family properties in the city of New York. It doesn't have to be zoned single family. It could be anywhere in the city. But it will clearly affect those areas that are zoned single family and 2 family the most, which is most of Queens, the southern and central part of Brooklyn, the north and east Bronx, and all of Staten Island.
This is Speak Up. This is Sandra Shelby. Till next time, goodbye.